Hi, today we're going to draw the full body of Mickey Mouse. This is a fairly complex drawing, but we're going to go step by step, but it is expected that you should have already done some of the other drawings and you're familiar with some of the techniques that we're going to do. Specifically, you need to know that as we draw, we want to draw very, very lightly. And in particular, on this particular drawing, there's many different reference lines that we're going to use. So it's important that you draw very lightly because there's going to be so many lines there. And at the end, we will come back and darken in the key lines to get Mickey Mouse. But this is the Mickey Mouse we're going to draw. And if you haven't done some of the other tutorials, one of the things to notice is that on his left side here, we're outlining his body in a gray color, and that's because we want to get that contrast between his middle of his body and his arm. So sometimes you draw some of the outline lines in gray. Otherwise, things don't show up. Like in here, we have his right arm, and we can't really see a detail between his body and the arm. That's okay in this drawing, but sometimes we use those gray lines to show some of the features like his eyebrows and things like that. So this is Mickey we're going to draw, and we're going to move fairly quickly. Now, Mickey Mouse, his height, many animators or artists think about how to draw the character based upon his head size. And so if the circle on the left represents his head, then the size of Mickey Mouse is the 3 or 2.5 head sizes. So if we can see the tops to bottom. Now his feet may actually come below this line, but that's essentially where the bottom of his foot would be. Now, since we're going to do Mickey Mouse and want to make sure it fits all on the paper, another way we can kind of think about that is thinking about a rectangle in which Mickey Mouse is going to fit. And so that's what we're going to use as our reference. So go ahead and you can lightly think of or draw the rectangle that you want. So it's not exactly the same as 8.5 by 11. It's a little bit shorter than an 8.5 by 11. But you can kind of see how that rectangle would be and kind of decide on your paper how big you want that to be. And then once you've drawn that, you want to think about a horizontal line in the middle and a vertical line in the middle as well, so that we're dividing up that paper. Okay? And that will help us figure out where things go. All right. So his head we're going to position, and if you look, if this is the middle of the circle for his head, it's going to be about 1/4 of the way from the middle of the square to the edge. So this is where the center of his head goes, and the horizontal part of the circle is a little bit below the middle. Okay, and so that's the size. It's going to come out to about the middle here, a little bit past, and you can see where the top comes, about a 1/4 of the way down, perhaps, and the bottom of the circle comes here. So you can, as you think about, this is the key to the drawing, you want to think about the bounds. Where does the top of something come? Where does the bottom come? Where does the center start? So that's how we want to define that circle right there. Okay, so I'll give you a chance to look at that and kind of decide, because once we have that circle, then the rest of it will flow. Okay, so now you've got the circle. What we're going to do is think about, another way that you can think about the size of the character is think about the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. Now, I've got the bottom of his feet. When we think about that, think about the middle of the bottom of his foot. The square is going to go a little bit bigger because his foot is actually going to come down out and a little bit below where his feet would actually touch the ground. And that kind of gives you the impression that his foot is actually coming out toward you, some depth. Okay, so think of the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, right here. So you can kind of draw those reference lines. And if you'll look about the halfway mark from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, we're going to draw another line, and that's the major line. And if you'll notice, that one actually happens to be the center of the square. That's kind of where we're thinking about things. Then that will give you another space right here that we can divide in half again. So that's what that line is. So we've got this major space here is divided in half by the horizontal line, and then the bottom space is divided in half. That's a fairly common thing to do when we draw characters so that we get the legs right. Okay, so now we've got the curve of his spine. Okay, and we're going to start a little bit above where the circle intersects that middle line, and we're going to finish at the feet. And if you'll look, you can see about how far it goes over. Maybe 1/3 from the middle to the edge. Okay, and you can see that curvature kind of goes flat and then is fairly straight down. So that's his spine, and that forms the center of his body as we're going to do things as we draw his body. So I'll give you a second to do that. Alright, so now we're going to draw his body, and it's kind of like a tear shape. You can see it's almost like there's a little circle here, and that top curve is really where his pants are going to be, and the curvature of it gives you that feeling that his body is tilting away from you, and you're seeing the pant line curve away from you. And the teardrop, you can kind of see it's almost a little bit curved on his back, but it's almost a straight line, and a curve, almost like a D shape, is the essence of the shape. Right? And you can see that it comes just a little bit out past the center, and you can kind of, if you think about it, this spine is actually looking like it's coming down the front of his body as opposed to the back of his body. And so we have that curvature. So I'll give you a second to draw that. A little bit of curve in his back that gives him some character. So he's tilting away from you. And again, draw very lightly, almost a bean shape, and then that curvature of his pants. So it shouldn't take too long. Don't spend too much time doing that. Sorry, I had to get back to the drawing. Now we've got a lot of lines that we're going to draw here, but they're not too bad because they're just pipes, really, and they're going to form his arms and his legs. So we can kind of think about the circles for his hand, and you can see that comes almost about in the center of the left-hand side, and again a little bit below center for the horizontal lines, and you can see it almost fills up that space. So that's pretty easy to draw that one. And then his left hand comes a little bit to the right, so almost splits this space between, so it's a about 3/4 of the way from the center to the edge. And the height is just a little bit above the center line, and it should be about the same size as his other hand. So go ahead and draw those circles. And then of course you connect the circles to his body with his arms, and so just little pipes. Same thing on his right side. Make sure it's coming up to the shoulder, and we're overlapping just a little bit. You can kind of see that. And you'll notice here that the arm, I don't stop at his body, I draw all the way through a little bit, and that lets me kind of see the shape of his arm. And again, since we're drawing very, very lightly, this is what's called drawing through. We go ahead and draw it as if we could see it, even though his body is going to block it, and when we do the final drawing, it won't. That line won't show up in his body. It'll stop at his body. His feet, you can see they're the direction that they go. This foot goes down into the left, and the other foot, so they almost form a line, kind of going up to the right a little bit. And you just make kind of a loop. Now notice that there's a kind of a triangular shape to this foot. See the kind of triangular shape if you did the whole thing? And the other one is curved a little bit at the bottom. So a little bit of an interesting shape to his shoes. Okay. And so that's his feet. And then, of course, we will do the pipes. And again, his leg needs to join smoothly to his back and smoothly to his front. And then the other ones, his left leg finishes at the center of his body, and then his right leg, again, has a pipe about the same size. So there you go. You've got your feet and the hands. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give that characteristic shape to his hands. And we're going to first start not with the individual fingers, but almost as if, you know, it's just a loop, and he has gloves on. And so it's curves a little bit. If you'll see, the line kind of curves this way a little bit. If I were to draw a center of it, you can kind of see where that is. So there's a little bit of a curvature there. And again, we want to join smoothly at the hand. And how far do we go down? We go down about halfway between these two lines here, the bottom and the second line. Okay, so that hand, just curve it up that way. It gives us a nice smooth curve. Okay. Now we're going to do his thumb, and if you'll notice that you've got, again, that D shape. So there's almost like a straight line here and a D kind of shape here. I'm exaggerating just to show you the kind of shape that we're doing. And there's a little bit of an S curve, if you remember an S curve. So it kind of curves one way and then curves back the other to get it to connect to his palm. Okay, and again, the thumb just comes up a little bit, and we're about, again, with halfway from the edge of his hand to the side, and that's the shape for the thumb. So this S curve and comes up in this little D shape, gives it a nice characteristic thumb shape. All right, and do the same thing for his other hand. Notice that the center of it kind of curves a little bit this way, and so the back part is almost straight, and then curvature this way. So go ahead and draw that part. And notice where it ends. Again, if we're always thinking about where the drawing ends, that helps us get the right shape. The hand comes out almost to the edge, not quite, and it comes down almost to that center line, but not quite. It helps us get the shape correct. And again, you've got the thumb on his left hand. Again, it's kind of like a D shape to it. And again, there's this S curve, a little bit of an S curve on his thumb. So we have a little bit of curve up and then kind of back down. So this kind of an S shape here and then down. All right. We'll go ahead and do the guidelines on his face. If you'll notice, the bottom guideline doesn't quite come up to the center of the circle. But it curves around, so there's an upward curve to it. And the vertical guideline ends just at the very edge of that circle, and it starts almost in the middle of the head, but not quite. And so we curve down a little bit like that, and so that's where we'll help us get the nose and the face correct. All right, and if you'll look up, we can show where the ears attach. They're not quite circles. And as you can see in this drawing, I didn't have them exactly the same, but that's okay. You get a little bit of character there. And the ear on his right ear, which is toward the back of his head, is a little bit above the middle of the circle. And his top ear attaches a little bit behind the middle. And there's a little bit of overlap. Okay, and you can see the size comes and fits to the edge of that frame. And almost, the other ear comes almost out to the edge of the frame here. So there we've got our 2 ears. Okay. Now we're going to put in a bunch of the details now for the hands. So let's start with his right hand. And we've got a little center line here that kind of gives his palm. And have a little connecting line at his thumb. And we have a little line just a little bit above the circle that's going to kind of help us get some character to that fingers, to the fingers where they end. And the key finger that we want to deal with is this little pinky finger, and just make it kind of loop back a little bit. And once you've done that finger, you see the middle finger comes a little bit longer and is just a loop and comes down. For his hand, we have a glove, and so you can see that it starts at where the circle intersects with his arm, comes up, and has like a loop and comes down. So it just follows the curve of that palm and loops around. And so that's your glove. And we'll do the left hand, same thing. It's got that center of the palm and the place where the fingers join, and then just do the fingers the same way. And again, his fingers have almost this D type of shape to them, like that. Okay. The glove is easy to draw. You just have a circle, or a half of a circle, that just kind of shows where this hand is going to enter, and then a second circle that's a little bit larger than that. Now notice that it comes very close together near his arm and further away near his palm. Okay, so the buttons again kind of follow the direction of his spine and point toward the head, and we just make them little ovals. I'll give you a chance to catch up a little bit. Let's go ahead and go down to the shoes real quickly. And the shoes, we've just got a little line on the tops to kind of give a little bit of a feeling of the curvature of the shoes, you know, as they bend as he walks. And where his feet enter the shoes, we've got a little curve, and the curve is down. So his feet, that gives the appearance that his feet are moving away from you, that the center of his waist is actually closer to you than the back of his feet. And you're looking down on them, so that gives you the idea that you're kind of looking down. And then just like we did for the glove, we just have almost a semicircle on the lips here that connects closer to his feet and then further away toward his foot. Same thing for the other one. All right, and now we're going to do his pant leg. And so we're going to start where his leg intersects this middle guideline right here, and just loop it around, and notice that it comes almost up to that circle, but not quite, and again finishes about his where his leg hits that middle line. And we're going to take that edge up here, and that's his pant leg, and we kind of make a little Y that follows that circle to show his the fold in his pants, and then the bottom of his left pant leg comes out. It flares out a little bit, so about to the edge of the hand, and we just connect it where his leg intersects the circle, and there's a little bit of line down to show some of that creasing in the pants. Okay? All right. The next thing that we want to do is we want to draw his face. Now, again, this assumes that you've already done his three-quarter face and you kind of know how to do that a little bit. But we'll show you the corner of his mouth should be about 1/4 of his total size of his face. You can see that that's where the mouth basically ends, and it should end near the horizontal guideline. Should start at the horizontal guideline. Notice that the snout comes down a little bit below the circle, and so that getting that snout right is the first part. Remember that the nose is kind of a D shape, and also remember that his bottom lip just follows the same curvature as the mouth. The mask, remember the mask is going to come almost straight down. The center of the mask is about the center between where it ends and the vertical guideline. So it kind of stays up there. And then his cheek, again, is formed by the corner of his mouth, so that cheek should kind of follow that same kind of thing. And also remember for the eyes that they have to slant down a little bit because, again, it gives you that depth. You can see the depth to the drawing. His left eye is further away from you. And the pupils will be about, in this drawing, they're about half, 1/3 to 1/2 of the size of the whole eye. And his eye, if you look, is about half of the size from the top of his head to that horizontal guideline. Okay. All right. So again, trying to pay attention to those where they end. And now this shows the final drawing of what things look like. And you can color them in. And this shows you where the lines you darken in. And that gives you Mickey Mouse.